This is Barry Zalma speaking for Claim School Incorporated's blog, Zalma on Insurance. Today, we're going to delve into a little fiction as to how some Russian immigrants got rich and why, when dealing with insurance fraud, it's always the details that cause problems. This is one of many fictionalized true crime stories of insurance fraud. From me, an expert who explains why insurance fraud is a heads-I-win, tails-you-lose situation for insurers. The stories should help to understand how insurance fraud in America is costing everyone who buys insurance thousands of dollars every year, and why insurance fraud is safer and more profitable for the perpetrators than any other crime. And it is certain that people who commit insurance fraud as a profession do so because it's easy. It requires no real capital investment, the risk is low, and the profits are high. The ease with which large amounts of money can be made from insurance fraud removes whatever moral hesitation might stop the perpetrator from committing the crime. The temptation to do everything outside the law was the downfall of the brothers Karamazov. The brothers had escaped prison in the old Soviet Union by immigrating to the United States. In their hometown of Volgograd, they were well known to the local police. The brothers had conducted a crime wave in the town since they turned 10. They were involved in burglary, armed robbery, smuggling, drug dealing, and prostitution. To avoid arrest and a long sentence in a Siberian gulag, the brothers invented a Jewish mother. They were then eligible to leave as victims of religious persecution. Their application for a visa to the United States as seekers of religious freedom was accepted immediately. The Save Soviet Jewry organization, who knew nothing of their criminal background, financed their trip to the United States. Upon the arrival in the United States, they met with acquaintances from the Soviet criminal class who had also escaped to the United States. They learned that the police were quite effective at catching and prosecuting strong-armed criminals, but had little concern for perpetrators of fraud. The brothers, being dedicated criminals, realized that they must become familiar with American language and American procedures. They spent their first year in the United States living off the money they were able to smuggle out of the Soviet Union. They studied English and American business procedure at a local high school. One of their classmates in their English as a foreign language class was a salesperson for Blue Sword of California, a health insurer. They bribed their classmate to sell them a health insurance policy so they could learn how the system worked. Pleasantly surprised, the brothers learned that if they sent a bill from a health care provider to Blue Sword, a check in the same amount would arrive in the mail. No one would telephone the provider or verify that the services had been rendered. All they needed was the proper form filled out in the proper manner. From what they learned in their business class, they created their first business entity, Mobile Medical Services. The filing of a fictitious business name statement showing that the brothers Karamazov were the owners of Mobile Medical Services was enough to put them in business. Their plan was simple. One, with money obtained from a small business administration loan fund set up for recent immigrants, they would lease a Ford Econoline van. They would then lease various pieces of medical testing equipment from local vendors. 2, the fact that they had no experience or training in the operation of such equipment was irrelevant. All that was necessary was that the equipment looked real. They were immediately provided a loan from the SBA to pay the first 3 months' rent. They visited their local instant printing shop and had a flyer printed using the most seductive of all advertising tools, The flyer said in 40-point type, "Free medical testing," and in smaller type, "Only for union members and government employees." They then set their van up in a parking lot of a local grocery store and waited for the customers to come in. Each person coming in for free medical testing would fill out a form and assign all of their medical benefits to mobile medical services. They would be seated on an EKG machine, weighed, and have their blood pressure taken. They would be sent on their way. The brothers Karamazov created a totally fictional account of the medical testing performed on each of their walk-in clients. All of their clients had insurance or were military dependents covered by Champa's system. The billings were created with the assistance of their classmate, the insurance agent, and averaged between $800 and $1,400. Each was justified by a diagnosis of one serious disease or another, ranging from pneumonia to cancer. The brothers sent their billings directly to the insurers of the individual customers or to the government. The billings were normally paid without question, although the insurers would reduce the amounts billed by 20 to 30%. Every 2 months, the brothers would file bankruptcy for their fictitious business and return the equipment to the lessor, who knew better than to make a claim on a bankruptcy estate. Investigation by the lessor found that the original business had disappeared and its owners were without assets, so they just wrote off the debt. The brothers would then start a new LLC with the assistance of a typing agency and go to another leasing agent who would find them new equipment. The brothers, within the first 2 years of their fraudulent business, had managed to effect gross earnings of $5 million a year. They had 20 mobile vans floating throughout the states of California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. Their profits were growing exponentially. Each van was insured. When a lessor got close to repossessing a van or its equipment, it would accidentally catch on fire on the freeway. The brothers would recover the total value of the equipment in the van. The lessors not named on the policies would be without recourse, and the insurers of the vans just lost their money. Had the brothers, from their generous earnings, honestly purchased the medical equipment in the vans and put them together using people who actually knew what they were doing, they would probably still be making millions in medical insurance fraud. The adjuster assigned to investigate the accidental fires had attended a class on automobile arson given by the California Conference of Arson Investigators. It became obvious that the van fire was an arson. He reported this fact to the Fraud Division of the State of California Department of Insurance and to the local fire department arson unit. The insurer retained counsel to examine the brothers under oath. They refused to testify. Their claim was denied since an examination under oath is a condition precedent to the insurance policy, and the breach of that condition eliminated coverage. The brothers did nothing to enforce their claim. They just went on to another insurer and another loan. At the Fraud Division, when the fire was recorded into the computer, it noted 4 other reports concerning the brothers. It appeared they were unrelated, but an investigator was assigned to look into the brothers Karamazov. As the investigation proceeded, the Fraud Division learned more facts about the brothers that required a team of Fraud Division investigators. They were joined by investigators from the United States Postal Service. The team worked for 3 years developing a prosecution against the brothers, and when the indictments came down, the investigators had established that the brothers were involved in a fraud totaling more than $80 million. Before they were arrested, however, the brothers returned wealthy to Russia. They were certain they had succeeded in the fraud of the century. On their return to the former Soviet Union, they lived like kings. They considered themselves inviolable. Confident of their skill as criminals and tired of living in the Urals, they took a holiday to the south of France. When they arrived, their names were noted by Interpol, who contacted the United States Marshal Service at the U.S. Embassy. The brothers were arrested and extradited to the United States with the blessings of the French government. The trial in the United States District Court, Los Angeles, was lengthy and involved the brothers and dozens of their co-conspirators. 2 of the brothers pled guilty, and 1 was convicted after trial. They are all serving time in a federal penitentiary. They have been ordered to make restitution and pay enormous fines. The chance of the insurers recovering any of the $80 million to the $2.3 billion they admit they stole is minuscule. Whatever remains of the assets they took with them to Mother Russia is well protected in banks in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. For the brothers Karamazov, the extent of their greed was their downfall. Crime paid very well for 3 years, and now they are paying for their crime in the federal penitentiary, knowing that when they are released they will still be wealthy, since the U.S. government was unable to track down their assets and take them away. This story is one of the more than 80 fictional true insurance fraud crime stories, and was adapted from my book, Insurance Fraud Costs Everyone, which is available as a Kindle book, a paperback, from Amazon.com. If you found this video to be interesting or useful, please subscribe to the videos on Rumble and YouTube.com, and tell your friends and colleagues so that they also can subscribe. The blog posting is free to anyone who clicks on the link zelma.com/blog, and you can subscribe to the blog post and get notice of every blog posting, which is usually 5, maybe 6 a week. You might also find interesting a use of a subscription to my locals community or to my Substack publications, where for a small fee, very important and extra materials are published for subscribers only. Thank you for your attention.